walk around during talks. Fine. I'm going to teach you to suck eggs. You've probably been here before. So in the very bad old days, collaboration meant going and sitting at the same computer, typing in the game with your friends next to this CRT. If you haven't seen a CRT for a while, you should, just to get the flicker. They're really quite something. And or we could print the documents out and post them to our friends, which was great. And I still see email with footers, that say to avoid wasting paper, although they waste bandwidth sending these things, which is, I wonder who prints their email out. But anyway, still computers would talk to printers, and everyone was happy with their fanfold paper, pouring out on the floor. So then there was a burst of innovation, LANs, fantastic, and a whole load of new networking protocols. And the great thing is about standards, of course, is that there's so many of them, and then, eventually, de facto, we get some that work. And one of the interesting things was that we did a great job of standardizing Ethernet and the Wi-Fi standards. And we did some really good things there, and the protocols on top of that, obviously. But the data we're actually sharing wasn't standardized at all. So one company owned all of that and all of the IP around it, which is, well, not really ideal in many ways. And we got this wonderful words, the network effect, from this, that as you scale the number of nodes, the goodness goes up hugely, and so does the number of documents that are changed. And so, we would still see, and we still see today, people emailing documents across the internet like this, and this is a wonderful picture of just the back hall of the internet, the big connections you can get in Wikipedia from Opti. It's great. And the wonderful thing is that, it's all standard protocols and routing and giant goodness here, and email is nicely standardized, and I'm still a plain text email person. I have not yet migrated to HTML email, never mind this horrible TNEF standard. But meanwhile, we're attaching these sort of great blobs of binary, increasingly well-standardized text. And so it really comes down to this problem of complexity, I think. We have this extremely complicated Microsoft Office file format, set of them. And there's a huge historic problem there. We have 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 5 trillion, very large number of documents out there. And they use all of these features. And you may not believe me, but we see, well, I'll show you a slide in a minute, some fun stuff that we see. And so we've had several approaches to try and fix this problem as an open community. One of those was open document format, obviously, in 2002, and documenting and standardizing a simpler, better format. So that was a great approach. Of course, two can play the standards game, and so Microsoft then came very rapidly to ISO standardize that. And there are many good things, though. It's great that Microsoft did that. I think they opened, to some degree, the crown jewels of their lock-in there, and we helped them publish that. And what you see when you look at the standard is just this multiple generations of silly ideas, or good ideas at the time that are still in the format, and you have to support. So if you want to put a text box in your Word document, there's just a whole generations, ActiveX controls, content controls, ancient form controls, all doing the same thing in different ways with different capabilities. And these are still getting emailed around the world daily. So that's the world of documents, and I think we all know it well. So there we go. And meanwhile, the internet was doing awesome things. So Netscape, their visionary, Mark Andreessen, poked Microsoft in the eye with a stick and made them wake up quite early, which was not kind. But possibly in the long run, he's right. I mean, ultimately, the web got a means to write samples to a sound card, only 15 plus years later. And we could actually play web audio, which was kind of great. But we do then have this cross-platform, cross-device factor API platform that I think really has just broken the hold of the Windows API for vertical apps everywhere. I don't know of anyone writing a vertical app for Windows API today. And I know, obviously Microsoft is using JavaScript intensively as its in various places, and there's a confused developer story there. But broadly, vertical apps, I think, are broadly a solved problem. So outside of the games, where Steam are doing a fantastic job of Linux, encouragingly, I think the Windows API is somewhat broken there, and it's just an amazing story of floss success. So, of course, the Internet Explorer wave, which is the purple, sadly purple, bit at the top of this graph, arguably an attempt to keep tying the web to Windows, arguably, who knows the motivation, but is now long dead. And I like to think that this is a fat PC application, The browser is really just that. It's millions of lines of C++, however you look at it. And all of this is based on a Linux desktop technology. KHTML is living. I was talking to Marche Stachioak, who's a big Apple guy in the W3C now, and we worked together back he was at Easel. And there's a lot of pluses on the end of KHTML now. But anyway, so it's really, really exciting to see that it is possible to take a market and to get sovereignty over it, and to unlock it, and to take it to free software, and that's absolutely fantastic. And it's possible there's something proprietary in the other box, but I somewhat doubt it. And then, of course, we see the devices changing. So Stat Counter now shows mobile things, and you can see the huge pattern of change there from desktop to mobile. And you can also see that it's pretty static. I mean, approximately flat at the end, which is interesting. But for desktops, though, are still changing more slowly. So if you look at those proportions, you can see the Mac is growing quite vigorously, and you've got some Chrome OS and Linux. They're fighting for the percent at the bottom, 2%, something like that. But it's an interesting trends there. But I think when it comes to sovereignty, and particularly that desktop unlocking, the document is still a real big problem, and the automation and the richness in that. And so, documents went through several things to try and reuse web standards to unlock all of that document data. And so we have wikis. Wikis are fantastic. Who would think that in 2002 you could persuade people to learn Markdown? And I'm not talking hackers, I'm talking like real users, and they would then collaborate with equals before headings and stars, and it was quite amazing. But the collaboration feature was so rich that we could get people to work together in this horribly constrained way. And so, nothing WYSIWYG about it. And then, of course, Google Docs came along and actually provided WYSIWYG, so you could see your page. What you see is what you get, which is great, and providing that suite. Or, of course, proprietary. And then Office 365, which to this day is not WYSIWYG, at least the word processing piece, is back at pre-Word 6 level. They have a reading view, which essentially renders it, I believe, in Word online and shows you the view. So you can see what it would look like on the page. And there was great celebration back in 2011. At last, the year of the Linux desktop is here. Now we've got Microsoft Office on Linux, except, So one of the problems, of course, is it's not quite like that. It's some great marketing there and great product positioning. But I think it's easy to see the online product, at least to date, as an extended advert for the Windows desktop, ultimately. Maybe the Mac desktop too, if you're lucky. But it's a little bit of a problem there. So still, the Office is really tying you then to Windows. And so this dream of this robust, online services that are, sovereign, actually all tend to end up looking like this, where all of the data is sucked into this, central silo of proprietary stuff, which is not terribly ideal. And this actually is perhaps worse than you think. So one of the interesting things about this is that if you want to collaborate across the whole internet, which you do, with people from everywhere. Wouldn't it be nice if you could do that with your data being encrypted, and you could comply with your GDPR and have all of your documents secured at rest? Well, there are many ways to try and provide this layer of security and encryption and DRM on top of that. So here's one way that you really don't want to do it. So this way, you have a server, and anyone asks for the document gets all of the document data. You just mail it to everyone. And if you're lucky, they put some code that runs around it that then enforces policy. So like you can't copy and paste, you can't print, you can't do that sort of thing, if you're lucky. So this is an ultra-secure way of doing everything, obviously, policy enforced on the client. But it's also quite popular. There's a huge attack surface here, and this is, I think, probably the end-to-end encryption model, ultimately. So instead of trusting your server, which you can control and lock down, you instead trust any number of different client operating systems and browsers to do crypto in the browser or in some client, and you think that you can secure this surface area. So it is an approach that can work, as we'll see on the next slide. But yeah, this is not recommended, but it's surprisingly popular, let's say. Another way you can do it is by central digital rights management. So this is a pretty cool thing. So you can send a document, you can publish it anywhere you like, because it's encrypted. So that's great. So no one can read it. Fantastic. We are secure. Our personal data is totally secure. But where is the key? Well, if you want the key to be globally accessible by lots of people, wouldn't it be nice if it was then pulled into one of these central places again where anyone could get it, right? So the document's encrypted, but where are the keys? Who has them? So the question then is how can we really show people a document and control policy on the client in a way that we can be sure works? So we can stop them copy and pasting their secure document. So we can stop them printing, stop them saving it as something else, or control who's viewing it and so on. And here's the answer. It's very simple. So you have a TPM chip in your laptop, and you sign the BIOS, and you sign the bootloader, and you sign the Windows operating system, and each one checks the next one, which signs the Office suite. And before we hand you the key from the centralized cloud for your document, we can validate that all of this has been signed correctly and that it's all working. The only problem with this, of course, is that there's a massive central point of failure here. And instead of not being able to edit your document if something goes wrong, you brick potentially your whole infrastructure, which is kind of, well, kind of cool, right? I mean, I don't know, power. Every sysadmin's dream, yeah. So that's not particularly cool. Of course, it does work, which is a benefit of the previous one was kind of, security theater. This actually can really work, but it's really quite dangerous. So how can we get the same thing without all of this nonsense? How can we get sovereignty? How can we control our data? How can we have it on premise and yet share it with people over the internet? Well, I'm glad you asked. So what we provide, and this is a Collabo feature, but I'm sure it could be done in many other ways, is to then have the rendering on the server side and provide high performance videos. Of course, the transport is of course encrypted. So you bring everyone into the server, so the document never leaves your site, your premise. And it's extremely elegant, it's extremely simple. You can federate it across the network, so you can have multiple different servers sharing authentication and trusting each other and so on. So there's no single central point of failure. And yeah, and it's absolutely wonderful. And of course, if you want to print, extra work has to be done by the server to send you something you can print. Or if you want to copy and paste, the server has to do work. And you can just not do the work. It's really easy server-side policy enforcement. But of course, sending pixels, you can still take pictures of the screen and so on. So we watermark those too. So it has your name all over it. We try to collaborate giving people documents without even having pixels. But it gets a bit boring, It's kind of black. So never mind all white, depending what you prefer. So yes, at a limit, you need something you can have on the screen. So there we go. So the ideal really then is to have this secure, on-premise, federated, interoperable, powerful web-based collaboration that's ideally easy to deploy and scale, and it's pretty and fast. And the good news is we have that. So there we go. And we embed it into all sorts of other people's products. So you can get it out there from vast array of French companies and also, well, all across Europe and the world. And let me show you some pixels, because that's all fun. So, of course, word processing, pretty nice, and WYSIWYG, you know, so you can see your document, you can arrange it and lay it out as you wish. Spreadsheets, of course, pretty drawings and funny edges, presentations, the full works. We've also got a mobile app which has a single hand, you know, thumb usable UI, which is kind of nice. And actually, interestingly, we wrap the sidebar here, which has a whole tool palette in it, and we turn that into the mobile pop-up thing through extreme cunning. I'd just like to give you an example of the interoperability thing, and I think the interoperability is really the key that ties you to the one platform or another. And interoperability is often thought to be about file formats. And really, I'd like to persuade you it's about functionality. So here's an example here, and this is, I checked this again this morning, because I couldn't believe it was still like this, but it is. So yeah, you can't edit your Word document. Actually, this is a docx, completely nice docx file. Because you want to tab through it and enter the fields. Like this is something you fill in. It's kind of government form for docking your super yacht with the. I didn't have one, but Larry Ellison does, and he needs to fill this in. So that's amazing. So the first thing is it's amazing that it can't be used in Office Online, and I think arguably this is a feature because it means that for now you have to put your documents in Azure and stick with Windows and use Office. I think that's a feature, not a bug, probably. But also, if you just zoom in and you look at the text, like what's going on here, you notice that it's got true color in it, which is kind of weird because it's interpolated. So the fuzzy edges are just like a bogus rendering misartifact of scaling something that's been rendered badly on the server, which is kind of annoying. Anyway, so of course you load it in Collabo Online and you can suddenly tab through your fields, fill your form out, edit it. And that's amazing to me. It's amazing that we can do so much better. That seems to me a deliberate choice. I mean, we have a big team of good people, but it's slightly extraordinary. So yep, I think the Microsoft Interop then is the key that allows you to get your documents out, to manage these workloads centrally, control your data, and collaborate. And so yeah, we've got a very mature code base. It knows about all those old horrible things in the file format, which is kind of cool. Let me give you an example. This is just one aspect of one thing that we do. So we have a VBA compatible macro language built in, and of course, you should be careful. If you see this thing here, be careful what you click, okay? If you ever run Word and see this thing, there's a reason that's there. So one of the things VBA can do is like directly use COM. So it can just like pull an object out of Windows and start using it. Better than that, it can directly load a DLL and hook a symbol and just call that function with stuff. So never mind sandboxing on on one level. This is some quite awesome stuff. Anyhow, but this macro we're looking at, and this we have compatibility support for this now, is using an API that was deprecated in 95 or 97 when I don't know if you remember Office 97 coming out. If you were programming in macros at that time, you had a big problem because they changed the macro language quite significantly. Because VBA is actually a copy and paste of Visual Basic. And they copy-pasted it, and then they copy-pasted a new version, and they found it was not compatible with the old version, which kind of sucked. So then they made this Word Basic object to put all of the old object methods on, and people are still using it to this day, quite extensively, in active use, in government, left and right. The good news, of course, is that we can be compatible with this. There's no problem with that. We control Star Basic. Actually, we can be compatible with this too. We create bogus COM objects that do the same on Linux. And we supported this for a long time. It's a popular one. So we have pseudo kernel libraries as well with symbols in them that we know are popular for people. So actually not a problem for interoperability. We can handle those. But interesting to know it's there. It's nice to know it's there, isn't it? And also nice to unlock that and then set those documents free so they can be used on Linux or Mac or potentially on your mobile remotely. So yeah, be very careful before you click that button. They know why. There's a warning there for a reason. Anyway, and we're all built on LibreOffice technology, so that's another cool thing. You know, so underneath the hood, it's all this. It's a beautiful code base, obviously originally from Sun, Starter Vision, Oracle, and now LibreOffice. And here are some of the cool people doing good work there. So all developed in public. Yeah, out to source. What else can I say? Lots of security. That's obviously very important to us. Trapping your document, each in an individual jail, making this scale and perform really well, filtering system calls to make sure nothing bad can escape. It's all very well having 8 million lines of code, and we do a lot of work. Our coverity score is lower than the kernel's score, for example, 0.00. But even so, something bad might happen. So let's lock it down in this jail. Let's make that very secure so nothing can escape. And you know, even as we speak, Google's OSS fuzz is stopping issues escaping here for us, which is cool. So let me sum up just quickly. I think digital sovereignty really is the vital thing here. I think unlocking your legacy documents can help free your enterprise really, really usefully. It gives you back control of your software, so you can use floss if you want. It gives you control of your CPU and what's executing on it. And we see the hardware is not as secure as we thought it was some years ago, you know, your row hammers and so on. It gives you control of your network, so you can know that no one's snooping on you. You can run it all on premise, and don't let your data leave your own, you know, leave your site if you're concerned about that, or at least your country if you're, you know, your GDPR concerned. And yeah, it gives you no fear of your germs, your COVIDs, and your geopolitics, Russia and, you know, strange governments everywhere, Taiwan, you know, the whole semiconductor industry is in one country right on the brink of, well, uncontested territory, which is a tragedy. You know, so GDPR, you know, take back control and do that. So that's my conclusion. I think, yeah, we are one of the oldest migration blockers, I think, is the document backlog there. I think most other systems are simpler and less coupled and have been solved. We're having an increasingly compelling solution for that that's easy to deploy. We'd love to help get back your data, workloads, documents. Do join us. Here's how to do that. So look forward to that and check out the code. And yeah, no limits. 100% open source code. We'd love to work with you. That's my talk. Thank you very much. Avez-vous les questions?
Yeah, thank you very much for this talk. So the next talk is actually in 15 minutes, so I guess we can take some time for the questions, or if you want to leave and go to another room, it's another possibility. So if you have questions, I can give you the mic, or you can just ask the question. Are there any questions? I should have prepared something. I should have prepared something, but I didn't. Anyway, thank you very much. Yeah.